Hello, Blue Team. This is Mr. Pennington with our review notes for the physical geography of Africa. And the first thing that you want to make sure that you complete is the map on page 32. It's really good practice. There is going to be a physical map on this test, so you want to get as much practice with the map of Africa as you can. And this unit is on the physical geography of Africa. And the first thing that we studied are the land and water features. And we talked about Africa's broken up into four major regions: North, West, East, and then South and Central Africa are combined into one region. And we talked about the Great Rift Valley and how it was formed millions of years ago by plate tectonics. Those forces are what gave much, the elevation and the lakes to this part of East Africa. The rest of Africa is actually called a plateau continent because it's so flat. A rift is just a deep trench or a crack in the earth, and you can see that right in these pictures here. Now there are four major rivers in Africa: the Nile, which is located in northeast Africa, the Niger, which is located in West Africa, the Congo, which is located in the center of Africa, and the Zambezi River, which is in southern Africa. The Nile is considered the longest in the world, and the white and blue are parts of the Nile that are tributaries. The rivers are streams that flow into the Nile, and then they empty at the Nile Delta by the Mediterranean Sea. Now, people have farmed around the Nile for thousands of years, and you talked about this a lot last year with ancient Egypt, but the land is fertile because the banks are constantly flooded. So therefore there's silt in this, and that's really good for things to grow. Many people grow yams and cassava along the Congo River, and that's mainly because those are wet crops. Cassava is like a starchy potato. It grows really well in rainforest type areas. And then along the Zambezi, the people use the current to produce hydroelectricity. The next section was on climate and vegetation, and there are three things that influence climate in Africa. Number one is the distance from the equator. The closer you are to the equator, the warmer it is. The further away, the colder it gets. The second one is elevation, your height above sea level, and it really talks about the higher you are, the colder it gets. And the last one is your nearness to large bodies of water. That will affect your climate. Now in Ethiopia, they sometimes have a drought, which is just a long period with little or no rain. We studied the four vegetation areas: the rainforest, the desert, the savanna, and the Sahel. The Sahel is just a transition zone between the desert and the rainforest. It's a word that means border. And one of the biggest problems in the Sahel that they're facing is desertification, the process of good soil turning into desert. So yes, the desert is getting bigger every year. And the desert we're mainly talking about is the Sahara, which is the largest in the world. The savanna is the place that most people think of in Africa. It has tall grasses, thorny bushes, scattered trees. That's where you would find those animals like lions and giraffes and antelope. We talked about nomads, or people with no permanent home, and they actually lived in the desert. And if you were in the desert, they actually survived by using camels and finding oases, which is just a fertile place where things grow. One of the things we didn't talk too much about, but I find fascinating, is this fly that actually kills cattle and gives a sleeping sickness to humans. And you can see this is located really in the Sahel and in the rainforest area, and that's called the tsetse fly. You want to take some time to learn about interpreting diagrams. There's a diagram on the test, but you want to look at what's the title tell us about the diagram. What do you see in the diagram? Mountains, lakes, rivers. What information can you pull from the diagram? It's really a skill that you're going to use the rest of your life. So you want to go to page 24 and you want to answer the three questions from page 25. The third section was on resources and land use. Most Africans are farmers, and the number one type of farming is subsistence farming, and that's where you grow just enough for you and your family. And but there are, in all regions, people are growing cash crops, and these cash crops are raised for sale. And one of the things that's fascinating is that when you grow cash crops, it actually takes away from land for subsistence farming. We even are starting to see a lot of people starting to harvest trees as another source of income. Now, if you're not a farmer, most people are miners. It's very important in Africa. Many countries, especially in northern Africa, have large amounts of petroleum, and two things that petroleum is used for is oil and gasoline. So they're getting very wealthy from this. Countries are trying to diversify or add variety, and that's kind of just like Latin America. You don't want to be dependent on one crop. If you're dependent on one crop and that crop plummets, or if you have a food shortage, it's really going to severely hurt your country. So they're really trying to add variety to produce more than one crop. And the last thing on the test is a map. You want to make sure that you can label these 12 items, and here's a map that you can take a look at. I'm going to give you a practice map in class, but you want to make sure that you have an idea of Africa, the major physical features of Africa. All right, good luck.